History has not treated Yamcha well. When it comes to anime, there is no character who has consistently represented absolute failure and weakness like Yamcha has. In fact, there is an official Dragon Ball manga entirely dedicated to someone trying to stop Yamcha from taking all of his major L's that he does throughout Dragon Ball Z. However, I think this ridicule is honestly unfair to him. Being a guy who's on the lower end of power in a story with characters who can blow up galaxies and entire universes isn't as unimpressive as people make it out to be. So, having compared Krillin to One Piece a couple weeks ago, I thought this week I'd compare Yamcha to one of the other series in the big three, Naruto. Is Yamcha strong enough to solo the Narutoverse? Or do the sheer amount of different powerful shinobi and even alien gods simply overwhelm the bandit turned baseball player? Let's find out. If you do like this stuff, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's jump right in. For this video, we'll be talking about Yamcha at his pinnacle of power within Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, and using the Narutoverse as it is at its peak before Boruto. The reason I'm doing this is that there are a lot of characters that have been introduced in Boruto True Blue Vortex recently with completely unknown powers, and it feels unfair to compare them to Yamcha at this exact moment, because for all we know, one of these guys has some sort of boundless, instantaneous win button ability. Also, I kind of want to do Boruto versus Gohan in the future. Still, if you want me to specifically do Boruto versus Dragon Ball in a video in the future, I can. But for now, I want to stick with known parts of the verse. To begin, let's start with Yamcha's scaling. Unfortunately for Yamcha, his reputation as a constant loser of fights did not begin just in the Saiyan saga. In his first appearance, he gets beaten by Goku, and after that, he continuously gets put up against people who are just far beyond him. In all the major Tenkaichi Budokai tournaments in original Dragon Ball, he's always eliminated very early in the bracket. He loses to Jackie Chun, he loses to Tien, and then he loses to Kami disguised as Shen, and almost always loses to these characters in quite embarrassing fashion, no less. Still, what I think is commendable about Yamcha here is that he never gives up despite these losses and continuously trains with the rest of the Z fighters in order to protect the Earth. By the time of the Saiyan saga, while he's weaker than both Tien and Krillin, Yamcha still has an impressive power level of 1,480, essentially making him equal to Raditz in power. Of course, he eventually goes up against the Cybermen, but a lot of people seem to forget that Yamcha actually wins the fight pretty easily, and the only reason he gets killed is because he gets caught off guard by the Cybermen's suicide attack blowing him up. We even get told immediately after that if Krillin had been in this exact situation, he would have died too. Of course, in the manga for the Namek arc, Yamcha sits things out entirely as he's, dead. But in the anime continuity, Yamcha and the rest of the Z fighters train on King Kai's planet and eventually fight the members of the Ginyu Force, matching and outright beating them, with Yamcha taking down Recoome specifically. Besides Goldo, the remaining 3 members of the Ginyu Force have power levels between 40 and 50,000, meaning that Yamcha grew 33 times stronger while training with King Kai. At this point, Yamcha at the bare minimum is multiplanetary or dwarf star level, as vastly inferior characters and power levels are capable of destroying planets and making dwarf star level explosions while blowing them up, and Yamcha is at least 4 to 5 times stronger than that. By the Android arc, while Yamcha's only real fight is getting almost instantly killed by Garo and barely surviving against the Cell Juniors, he might actually be more impressive than we think. You see, Yamcha gets completely confused for base Goku at this time by 19 and 20 due to the size of his ki. This is based off of projections that Garo made for Goku's hypothetical strength growth. While he obviously didn't know about Super Saiyan, he does know about Frieza and King Cold. If this is true, he might believe that base Trunks was strong enough to beat Mecha Frieza, because again, he doesn't know what a Super Saiyan is. This means, by extension, Yamcha would be stronger than Mecha Frieza. This would mean he would scale to beyond a power level of 150 million, and at this point easily be star level, and using the anime, potentially solar system level based off of Frieza tanking Namek's explosion. However, this only works if you think Garo was aware of Frieza's actual power level instead of just grabbing his unique DNA and moving on. Either way, this level of scaling doesn't really matter because of what happens in the Buu Saga. Notoriously, in the Buu Saga, Yamcha slacks on his training until he's sent to the Otherworld, where he quickly grows so strong that he can beat Ollie Buu and Gorilla at the same time, doing better against him than Pikkon does, the same Pikkon who can one-shot Super Perfect Cell. In other words, Yamcha becomes strong enough to solo the Cell games by himself and easily is a solar system destroyer or beyond. end. As for speed, again, he would scale similar to base Goku right after the Cell games and base Pikkon, who traveled across universe-sized spaces in the otherworld, putting their speed at literally quadrillions of times faster than light. Unfortunately though, this is where Yamcha's scaling ends. In Dragon Ball Super, he hasn't done anything. He's not recruited for the Tournament of Power, with his only statement being that in the Moro arc in the manga, he says he's still in the top 3 strongest Earthlings, likely making him the 3rd strongest behind Krillin and Tien, but over Roshi. Still, I hope I've shown that he is not a fraud when it comes to power. It's just that everyone else he's against is just that much stronger. Still, will the Bullfang Fist be enough for the world of Shinobi? Let's find out. Just like any anime verse with a massive cast of characters, most fighters in Naruto are going to be completely irrelevant power-wise. To better illustrate my point, remember what Edo Madara did to the Shinobi Alliance? It took the combined effort of an entire army of Shinobi and multiple different Kage-level fighters, not to beat Madara, but simply stop him from destroying all of them with 2 big rocks. This doesn't mean I'm accusing these guys of being fodder. I think even pretty average Shinobi fall into the town levels of power, as even 2 low-level Jonin could fight the entire Sound 4 at once, who all individually have town-level scaling. Still though, if you're asking like, what about the Sound Ninja? This is why I'm not bringing them up. Love them or hate them, they do not matter in a fight like this. Ultimately, the only characters that do matter are going to be the strongest Kage, some of the strongest Uchiha, 10 Tails related characters, and a handful of other random guys. Everyone else is simply not strong enough or doesn't have nearly enough hacks to be relevant. So let's go over the stats for the high tiers of the Narutoverse. Nearing the top tier of the verse, you have characters like 10 Tails Madara and Hagoromo, who through the God Tree and the Moon both generated planet-busting levels of energy. This is pretty consistent with objectively weaker characters who are still high tier like Biju, having calcs for their attacks being anywhere from large island level to multi-continental. This is also supported by statements that imply that the Nine Tails could cause worldly destruction over time, so characters vastly stronger than him being far more casually planetary makes sense. Within this time period, there are only a handful of characters that even exceed this tier, notably Naruto, Kakashi, Sasuke, and of course Kaguya. Now, Kaguya's creation and potential recreation of her time-space has been absolutely argued to death. Some people say it's not even planetary, while others say this justifies a multiversal tiering for the character. As a reminder, there is no single objective way to scale a character. There is simply interpreting evidence with scrutiny. With that being said, I think the high tiers in Shippuden are at most solar system level based off this feat. Still though, if you want to use the multiversal scaling, keep in mind I could go and say that second form Frieza is universal, but I don't. Anyways, while no one is outright stronger than Kaguya, being similar in speed and having the capacity to damage her means that some characters are at least fractionally comparable to her. As for speed, the Naruto versus high tiers are relativistic or vaguely faster than light, but unfortunately, unlike Dragon Ball, they are much harder to solidly quantify. The best the verse has is that there are several light speed jutsu that characters at one point or another are capable of dodging or at least reacting to, and then they get stronger by an unknown amount by the end. So it's hard to say they are something like hundreds, thousands, or millions of times faster than the speed of light with any sort of confidence. Of course, there's hacks, but honestly, I just have one question. Of all the hacks in Naruto, which ones can actually reasonably stop someone who's both way faster and way stronger than you? Just a reminder, Yamcha was casually slapping around characters who could one-shot people who could do similar stuff to Kaguya. Also, he's likely billions of times faster than any shinobi. It's generally hard to comprehend how big of a number quadrillion is. So, for example, potential one-shot abilities like Kaguya's Ash Bones, the Totsuka Blade, or Kamui's Space Warping don't really matter because Yamcha isn't going to just stand still and let them hit him. Of course, the only relevant ability in this context then becomes Genjutsu. It's not necessarily something Yamcha can react to or see coming, but even then, I don't think it would work. Again, ignoring the fact that Genjutsu users need to actually send chakra to their opponent to put them in a Genjutsu, 99% of them by definition wouldn't work. I've talked about this before, but ki does not flow through the body in networks like chakra does, and Genjutsu directly works through manipulating these networks in the brain. Still though, people argue jutsu like the Infinite Tsukiyomi ignores this, as it's seen affecting animals who don't necessarily have chakra networks. This is fine and could hypothetically work on Yamcha, if not for the fact it's extremely extremely conditional and hard to pull off. Not only does it need a full moon, but it takes significant time to actually cast it, to the point where Madara dropped multiple meteors beforehand in order to stall. Furthermore, the moon begins to visibly change before the jutsu is fully casted. If Yamcha sees the moon suddenly turning into a giant Sharingan, he could easily erase the entire thing with a single ki blast at speeds faster than any shinobi could react. If Kiba had time to notice the moon changing, then so can Yamcha. Aside from that, there isn't really anything in the Narutoverse that it can offer to stop Yamcha, just because of the overwhelming difference in speed and strength. So, for the first time in forever, I'm giving a W to Yamcha. No jokes, no satire, Yamcha is simply that strong and deserves that level of respect. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As always, thank you so much to my members who made this video possible and who got to see the video early. If you disagree with my takes, let me know how I was wrong in the comments down below. See ya.